Before electricity and computers existed, there were already machines that could move on their own. They didn't use batteries or electronic programs. Instead, they worked using ropes, weights, gears, water, air, and steam. One of the clearest examples of this comes from ancient Alexandria. This is where Hero of Alexandria lived, a mathematician and engineer in the 1st century. He created and wrote about various automatic machines. These included temple doors that opened automatically, a machine that dispensed holy water when a coin was inserted, and mechanical shows that moved on their own. But one of his most ingenious designs was a small-wheeled vehicle. It was not driven by a person. Before it was set in motion, a rope inside was arranged so the vehicle would follow a chosen direction. There was also a heavy object hanging inside. As it slowly descended, it pulled the rope. The rope turned the wheels. When the rope is wound differently on the 2 wheels, the vehicle turns. When the winding is the same, it goes straight. This means you can set in advance when it will go straight, turn, or stop, just like a simple program. But instead of computer code, ropes and rotating parts give the commands. This kind of system was used in a moving miniature theater. The entire stage moves while the figures automatically move and present a story in front of the audience. Hero has another machine that is like a modern vending machine. When a person inserts a coin, it drops into a small container attached to a lever. Because of the weight of the coin, the valve opens briefly and releases the right amount of holy water. When the coin falls out of the container, the valve automatically closes. The mechanism is simple, but the main idea is the same as a vending machine. Now, when you insert payment, the machine will automatically dispense the product on the other side. Even before Hero of Alexandria lived, there was an old story in China about a person who made something related to mechanical parts. This can be found in an ancient Taoist text called Liezi. In the story, a craftsman named Yan Shi showed a life-size mechanical figure to King Mu of Zhou. It looked like a real person. It could walk, move its head, sing, and dance. When it acted in a way that angered the king, Yan Shi opened the figure. Inside, they saw parts made of wood, skins, glue, and lacquer. But we shouldn't immediately say that this was a real robot. The Liezi is a philosophical text that mixes stories, lessons, and events that are hard to prove. It's also not certain when exactly the entire book was completed. There are scholars who believe that it contains some ancient parts, but the version that has reached us may have been edited or compiled in later times. There are also no surviving machines, drawings, or clear instructions on how Yan Shi's mechanical man was made. So it's more accurate to consider this as an ancient story about automation, not as a confirmed archaeological discovery. But it's still really impressive. Despite this, it's possible that the story originated from a simpler puppet or mechanical figure that could only perform limited movements. Ancient Chinese craftsmen already knew how to make crossbow mechanisms, locks, water clocks, and other machines with moving parts. So it's not impossible that they were able to create a figure that could be moved using a hidden lever or rope. But there is not enough evidence that they were able to make a robot that was almost identical to a real person. Even though Yan Shi's story is just a legend, it still shows something important. Thousands of years ago, people were already wondering if it was possible to create something that could move and act like it was alive. And in Alexandria, this was no longer just a story. Hero's designs showed that people could give a machine pre-programmed movements, even without electricity, motors, or computers. In fact, Hero of Alexandria didn't just design simple vehicles. He also created an automatic theater that could perform an entire scene without anyone operating it. On the small stage, there are figures that move, doors open, and scenes change automatically. Everything works using weights, ropes, pulleys, axles, and rotating parts. Once the system is started, it continuously presents the prepared show. It's not a real robot that thinks. It only follows the movements that were arranged by the creator before the show started. But this idea is important. It's like the commands for the machine are written in the arrangement of the rope. When its winding is changed, the movement and timing of each part also change. In front of the audience, the show might look like magic, but behind the stage, physics and careful design are what make everything work. Hero also used heat and air to automatically open the large doors of the temple. When the fire is lit on the altar, the air in a hidden container heats up and expands. This pushes water into a hanging vessel. As the vessel gets heavier, it pulls the ropes attached to the door. Because of this, the door gradually opens. When the fire is put out, the air cools down. The water returns to its original container and the door automatically closes. To people who cannot see the mechanism, it seems as if the fire itself is controlling the door. Hero also made an Allipoli. It is a round container that spins when steam comes out of two bent pipes. It was not used to run a factory or a vehicle. It was just a demonstration of how steam can create rotation. It showed that ancient engineers already understood the power of steam. But at that time, the materials, factories, and the needs that would drive the creation of the modern steam engine did not yet exist. After many centuries, automatic machines further developed in Baghdad. In the 9th century, the brothers Muhammad, Ahmad, and Al-Hassan Tate. They are better known as the Banu Musa. All of them studied mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. They were also part of the era when Baghdad was a major center of learning. They wrote the Kitab al-Hiyal, or the Book of Ingenious Devices. It describes around 100 mechanical devices. Many of their designs use water, air, valves, and floats. Some containers automatically dispense the right amount of drink, and some fountains change the dispenser's shape. There are lamps that automatically add oil while burning. In an ordinary container, water just keeps flowing out when you open it. But in the designs of Banu Musa, there are valves inside that automatically open or close, depending on the height and weight of the water. It's like a simple automatic control system. When the water reaches a certain level, a part will move and close the passage. When the water goes down, the passage will open again. There's no computer monitoring this. The water itself is what moves the system. There are also old studies that link Banu Musa to an automatic flute device. The air creates the sound while a rotating part determines which hole will open and when it will make a sound. By changing the arrangement of the protruding parts on the rotating cylinder, the sequence of notes can be changed. But this should not be described as if it were a modern humanoid robot performing on stage. This is a clearer example of an automatic musical instrument that uses mechanical control. Baghdad was important during that time. Because of this, much ancient knowledge from Greece, Persia, India, and other places was studied and incorporated. They didn't just copy the old ideas, they also added to and improved them. By the 12th and 13th centuries, another engineer created more detailed automatic machines. His name was Ismail Al-Jazari. He worked at the court of the Artukid rulers in Diyarbakir, which is now part of southeastern Turkey. In 1206, he finished a book about making mechanical devices. He didn't just say what each machine does, he also included clear drawings and explanations of how their parts work. One of his most famous designs is the boat with automatic musicians. There are figures sitting in the boat pretending to play music. As water flows through the system, their arms move and the instruments make sounds. The rhythm of the drum is controlled by small pegs attached to the rotating cylinder. When a peg hits a lever, the drummer's arm moves and strikes the drum. When the position of the pegs is changed, the rhythm also changes. It's like an early drum machine. The difference is, it's made of wood and water, and it uses mechanical parts instead of electronics. It's also not clear whether the boat moves on its own without anyone pushing or guiding it. What is clearly depicted in the design is the automatic performance of the musicians while on the boat. Al-Jazari also made automatic devices for washing hands. In one design, there is a figure pouring water. After using the water, another part provides soap and a towel in the correct sequence. He also made large water clocks with figures, birds, sounds, and various movements as time passed. One of the most famous is the elephant clock. It has a large figure of an elephant. On top of it are people, a dragon, a bird, and other mechanical figures. Inside, there is a container that slowly sinks in the water. Its movement triggers the next action of the whole clock. When the set time passes, the figures move and a sound can be heard. Afterwards, the system resets to start again. It's not because these devices have minds of their own. The real brilliance lies in the creator. He needs to plan exactly the timing, weight, water force, size of the holes, and the movement of each part. If even one measurement is wrong, the water might flow too fast, the sound could be delayed, or the figure might not move. That's why the automatic machines of Hero, Banu, Musa, and Al-Jazari were not just toys for the rich. They showed that a difficult task can be broken down into small commands. First, a valve will move. Then, the wheel will turn. As the rope is pulled again and again, eventually, the figure will move. That is also the main idea of automation today. An orderly sequence of commands carried out by a machine without needing to be monitored at every step. Al-Jazari has another important design that is still used in many machines today. This is the crank and connecting rod. It turns continuous rotation into a back and forth motion. For example, when a wheel turns, it can push and pull a piston. Al-Jazari used this kind of system in a water pump in the early 13th century. The same principle can still be seen in pumps and in vehicles that use piston engines. But that doesn't mean all modern engines came from him alone. Many more engineers added to and improved the design in the following centuries. After more than 500 years, there was a French engineer who created automatic figures that almost moved like they were alive. His name was Jacques de Vaucanson. In 1738, he presented a life-size flute player in Paris. There was no music box hidden inside it. The figure actually blew air through the flute, while its mechanical fingers covered different holes. There were bellows inside that served as lungs. They controlled how strong the air coming out of the figure's mouth would be. Its fingers moved according to a preset pattern. Because of this, it could play 12 different melodies. It was also examined by the French Academy of Sciences. They saw that the flute itself was producing the sound and not a hidden instrument inside the body. Vaucanson also made another musician that played the pipe and drum, but his most famous creation was not a human. It was a mechanical duck. It was made of metal and could move its neck, wings, beak, and feet. It could drink, eat grain, and make sounds like a real duck. The most surprising thing was that after it ate, it would release something that looked like droppings. Because of this, many people who watched believed that the duck was really digesting the food it swallowed. But this was actually another trick. The grain it ate would go into a separate container. What came out from behind was already prepared. That was changed even before the demonstration started. So digestion doesn't really happen inside the duck. It's just that the two separate containers were cleverly hidden. This doesn't take away from the skill of the creator. It's still very difficult to simultaneously move the neck, beak, wings, feet, and other parts to make a metal animal look alive. This also shows what engineers at that time wanted to know. How many movements of a living creature could a machine imitate? Eventually, the original duck was damaged and lost. All that remained were old drawings, descriptions, and replicas made from records about it. Vaucanson's work did not end with entertainment. He was assigned to help the silk industry of France. He found a way to make weaving more automatic. He created a loom that used punched parts to control which threads would move. His entire design was not successful at that time, but some of its ideas were later improved in the jacquard loom. In the jacquard loom, the holes in the card determine which thread will be lifted. When the pattern of the holes changes, the design that appears on the fabric also changes. It's like instructions written using holes. This system became important in the history of computing because it showed that instructions could be placed on a physical object and read by a machine. But it's not correct to say that Vaucanson himself made the first computer. His work in textiles was just one of the steps that led to more advanced programmable machines. While Vaucanson was making automatic animals in France, a family of Swiss clockmakers was preparing a more complicated figure. They were the Jacquet-Droz family. In the 1770s, Pierre-Jacques Jacquet-Droz and his son Henri Louis, together with their associate Jean-Frédéric Lechaut, created the three famous automatons. There was a musician, an artist who drew, and a child who wrote. The most famous among them was the writer. It was a figure of a child sitting in front of a table. He holds a pen, and there is a paper in front of him. When activated, he brings the pen to the ink, removes the excess ink, and starts to write. His hand moves slowly. His eyes and head also follow the tip of the pen. He can copy not just a single fixed word. There is a system inside it that can be adjusted to select letters. Because of this, it can create a message of up to 40 characters. Inside its body are thousands of tiny parts. There are cams that control every movement of the hand. Up, down, left, right, and how hard the pen will press on the paper. Because the selection of letters and the movement of the hand are separate, this can be considered an early programmable writing machine. It does not understand. When it writes words, it also doesn't have a mind of its own. It only does exactly what the creator programmed inside. The writer and the two other Jacquet-Droz automatons remain at the Museum of Art and History in Neuchâtel, Switzerland. They are cared for as important examples of 18th century engineering. On the outside, they just look like toys for rich people, but inside, they demonstrate an idea that remains important to this day. Writing, playing music, and drawing can be broken down into many precise movements, and then those movements can be performed by a machine. The writer is even more complicated than it appears on the outside. When the pen reaches the end of the line, its hand automatically returns to the beginning. When it needs more ink, it dips the pen into the ink again. The letters also don't look like they came from a printer. Each one has thick and thin strokes, just like real handwriting. There are thousands of tiny parts inside its body. Every movement of the hand, head, and eyes is controlled by separate parts. What's even more amazing is that the message it writes can be changed. There is a rotating system inside that determines which letter will be made and what the correct sequence is. It can write a message with up to 40 characters. It doesn't understand the meaning of the words, but it can be given new instructions without changing the entire mechanism. That's the reason why the writer is considered one of the first programmable automatons. Along with it in the museum are two more figures made by Pierre Jacquet-Droz, Henri-Louis Jacques Jacquet-Droz, and Jean-Frédéric Lechaut between 1768 and 1774. The first is the draftsman. This is also a child figure, but it holds a pencil. It can make 4 different drawings. These include a picture of a dog, a royal portrait, and a scene of Cupid riding a small carriage. While drawing, it occasionally stops and blows on the paper as if removing dust from the pencil. The second one is the musician. It's a figure of a woman sitting in front of a small organ. It's not just pretending to play. It really presses its fingers on the keys to make its own music. It can play 5 melodies. Its head and eyes also move as it follows its own hands. The chest also slightly rises to make it look like it's breathing. After the song, it bows in front of the audience. These small movements were made so that the figures wouldn't look like stiff statues. It's not enough for just the hands to move. The eyes, head, chest, and body also need to move at the right time to make it look alive. When the 3 automatons were made, they weren't museum displays yet. The Jacquet-Droz family used them to show wealthy customers and the royal court how skilled they were at making clocks and other mechanical objects. Their products were taken around different parts of Europe. Their business also reached major markets in Asia, including the imperial court of China. Their way of selling was clever. instead of just saying they were good at making clocks. They showed a child writing, a child drawing, and a woman playing music. When a king or a wealthy businessman saw this, he would immediately think that if they could make such a complicated figure, they could also make a very beautiful clock. So automatons were not just for show, they were also like moving advertisements of their talent. The three figures arrived at the Museum of Art and History in Neuchâtel in the early 20th century. They remain there as some of the most important automatic figures made in the 18th century, but that doesn't mean they're always operated. Their parts are old and delicate. Specialists need to watch over and repair them so they don't get completely damaged. At present, the writer remains on display but is temporarily not working due to a technical problem. The scheduled demonstrations of the draftsman and the musician are still ongoing. These three are important because they clearly show the difference between automatic movement and true intelligence. They can write, draw, and play music, but they can't make their own decisions. The writer can't choose what he wants to say. The draftsman can't think of a new picture. The musician also can't choose his own song. All their actions come from the instructions placed inside them by their creator. That's also their main limitation. With so many automatic systems today, a device can be very fast and very good, but it still depends on the design, data, and commands given by humans. That's why it's not correct to say that every ancient automaton is a direct ancestor of the modern robot. Their technology is different, and they don't have electronics, sensors, or artificial intelligence. But they're trying to answer the same question: how many human tasks can be broken down into small steps and assigned to something that can't do anything else? In writing, you first have to choose the letter, move your hand, press the pen, and move to the next part. In drawing, you need to control the direction, length, and thickness of each line. In playing music, you need to press the right key at the exact time. When all those steps are arranged, a mechanical figure can perform actions that only humans used to be able to do. That's where the bigger idea of automation started, not in creating a machine that is truly alive, but in understanding that a complicated task can be broken down, organized, and repeated. From wood, metal, water, and clockwork, humans gradually learned how to put instructions inside a device. Now we use electronic code, but the challenge is still the same. How do you teach something without a mind to do a task correctly? That's the reason why old automatons are still important. They do not prove that there were already advanced robots in ancient times. What they prove is that people started thinking about automation, programming, and imitating the movements of living things much earlier than we thought.